Hello guys, just trying to figure out my camera here. All right. Welcome to the fifth episode of PowerApps for 16 January 2019. This is Vivek Pavishi, live from Tip City. And today we are going to follow some different approach. I'm not going to cover any updates. There has been a lot going around components and some other stuff as well. But today I wanted to do two demos. One is for 360 spin images and how to implement those in Power Apps. And the other thing is if you ever had this issue where you wanted to kind of sort a gallery based on any of the columns that you have in that data source, and you you probably kind of created a manual column names and edited it, used it in a drop down, and then created a formula around it. But what if there was an option to get those column names, which right now there's no formula in Power Apps, but if you could figure out a way using Flow, you could just automatically use the column names and then create that drop down. So before we go on to the demo, David's on the chat asking about when components are coming. Still not sure about that. That's something which Microsoft can answer to. But yeah, if you want to try it out, it's in the preview environment. A lot of people have been playing around with it. So have a look there. All right, let's get started on the first demo, 360 spin images. So let me share my screen here. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. So if this term is something new for you, 360 spin image is basically something if you go to Amazon or any other website, you can move the product fully 360 and see the whole product just instead of just seeing images. So this is something which may be useful to implement in your Power Apps. The business case scenarios could be if you have a sales team who wants to show this product to a customer, you could use it, and there could be different use cases for this. But yeah, let's go ahead and try to understand how do you implement these kind of 360 spin images. All right, so let me first give a demo here. So this is an image that I got. Okay, it's not very smooth in the, but yeah, oh, it's working fine now. So if you see, I've clicked on I kind of left clicked and just moving my mouse here and there, and the image it seems like it's moving. Now, how is this happening, right? Before I go on, let me just check if my feed is live. I was just not sure about that. Okay, it's still, it's showing the other screen. Let me stop sharing here. Just give me a second. I guess I went through the whole demo and didn't show anything. Okay, screen share. Hangouts on the air. Always, sometimes some issue. Okay, this should work. All right, so let me give the demo again. I guess nobody could see that. So this is a a 360 spin image. Try to create over here. Okay, don't move. Okay, and let me move it around. Yep, there you go. So I'm just clicking on the mouse over here and moving the cursor, and the object seems that it's moving for, I wouldn't say 360, but total 180 kind of. It doesn't move up and down. That's something that can be created, but for the simplicity, I just created something which can move kind of. I would say 360, but you cannot see the top. So how is this happening over here? What I have done is I've used a slider, and let me make it visible here. So that's, yep. And yeah, so this is basically my slider that I have over here, which I am moving. And I mean, you can't see the object behind, but that's that's how the image seems to be. It's moving. And based on the slider value, what I'm doing over here is I'm changing the image of this image control. So there are two components to it. One is your image control that you have. You need to dynamically change it based on the slider value. And the slider value is slider is something that you need to kind of fully, I would say, overlap with the image. And when you move the slider, it seems like you're just moving the object or in the image. It's a neat way to kind of make it seem that it's that you're make giving the user the option to move the image, uh, kind of rotate the image, but actually it's just a single image control with multiple images, and the image is basically changing with the slider value. Now, now you'd say, how do I get these images, right? So this is something that you need to figure out how you want to implement 360 spin if you want to implement it in your site. In my case, I just took this as a sample from the internet. Uh, these are around 65 images. Uh, so in that whole 360, it's basically 65 images that are changing every time the slider value is changing. And that's how the image seems to be moving. You could do it with even 12 or 24 images. It's just that the motion wouldn't seem very smooth, but you can still implement it. And people have ways to take these 360 images. There are huge equipments or machines that can be used to take these 360 images. But if you already have something like this available, um, from your marketing team or something like that for your products, you could uh, use this to implement. You could use those images to implement this. So to kind of go back, run through this again, it's a slider that's moving around, and the image is changing based on the slider value. Now, there's one trick to it which kind of gets a bit complicated if you're trying to implement it. So my image value, this is something which I have just explored when I browsed the community. Somebody mentioning about how you can kind of access image resources that you're, I mean, basically the media that you're adding to the app, how can you access it with a kind of reference, I would say. So this is something that has been working for me so far. It's so this is how you kind of call an image: app res colon / resources / and then the image name. So if you see here, my image name in this case is 63. My label2.txt I'll show you in a second, but so label2.txt is basically this one, 09, and it So the image is changing based on this formula. I know this is a bit tricky way to do it. I mean, it gets tricky to kind of implement because you cannot just enter the name directly because it doesn't recognize it as an image reference. If you just put 09 or 64, if you reference it using a formula, it doesn't recognize it. So if uh, I just show you here, x 2.text, and it won't realize that it's the image 09. Even if I even if I make any changes over here, it won't realize that. So you need to use this kind of I would say the file reference formula to get that image. This also is a bit, so if I just, so for this what I've done is I've created an Excel. Let me see how I can show. I think I had opened it in my different window, but what I did is in the Excel, let me see if I can open that here. Okay. Just give me a second here. Yep. Okay. So this is the Excel, which basically has the value and the image name here. So I put it in single quotes so that you can recognize it as an image when I'm referencing it back in PowerApps. So I'm just looking up the value and putting the image name accordingly. So that's kind of in a nutshell how you implement this 360 spin. I know it's something kind of going out of the way and doing some kind of hacks around how to kind of reference the images, but it's a pretty neat way to implement 360 spin. If this is something that you have been kind of waiting for Power Apps to introduce as a feature, if you don't want to wait for that and if you want to implement it, and this is a cool way to implement it. If you have any questions around this, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be adding the source file for this app and the for the app in the description of the video. So if you need to download it and play around with it, feel free to do that. All right, so moving on to the next topic, and this was something that I found in one of the community questions was uh, if you have a data source, and let me open, let's say, oops, not this, show columns test. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you have a data source where you want to get all the columns and sort that data source in Power Apps, it gets a bit tricky because you cannot, and I need to close that Excel. You cannot get the column names of a data source, and there's no formula to access that. So there is one way to do it where you can do it through flow. So let's go on and check the flow to get the column names. Let me open it here. So this is my flow. My trigger is PowerApps. The next step is get rows. So I'm trying to get all the rows from that same Excel that I just showed you. This is the table name. I know I'm really bad at naming right now. This was something that I created on the fly. So I need to probably give a better table name over here. And then respond to Power Apps. I'll show you in a second how that's happening. But before that, let's see the response that we get when we do the get rows thing. So we'll go ahead and test it. And run flow. Flow ran successfully. Get rows. And if so, what it returns to me is it returns the OData context, and then in the value, if you see, you're getting first two is basically the OData e tag and item internal ID, which probably you don't need to, even if you don't understand, that's fine. But what you want is column A, column B, and column C. You need these column names, right? Um, so what the next step is to get this uh, back to Power Apps. Only the first one, because you just need one of the records, and you can then play around with this data to extract the column names by using some substitute replace formulas, and I'll show you in a second how to do that. But what you want to access is the output of this get rows, so the body, and then you want the value, kind of the array, and you want the first record of that value. So what I've done is I'm using the respond to Power Apps. If you have not used this yet, this is something that you can use to send back data from Flow to Power Apps. The trigger has to be Power Apps, and the response has to be. The trigger has to be Power Apps for you to return anything back to Power Apps. So that's the requirement. But yeah, if you set that up, if you set up Power Apps as a trigger, you can then respond to Power Apps. So what I'm returning over here is I created an expression which is body get rows, uh, and from there I want the value array, and then I want the zeroth. That's how you basically get the first record in an array. You need to use the zero reference for it. You could use the first one as well. You basically need any record of that. But if the I know this won't be the case, but if you have only one record in your uh, data source, you can use this. You need to use the zeroth one. So before we jump onto the Power App section and show how to use, kind of how to get the column names, I know you probably might not have a data source as Excel. You probably might be using some other data source, so it applies the same way to others as well. If you have CDS, if you have SQL, just use the action to get rows. And so get rows is basically in any of the data source connector, you would have the get rows option. So, and that get rows, you just need to see what response do you get in the body of that action. And then accordingly, you'll have to modify your expression over here if required. But yeah, it would work the same way for any kind of data source. All right, so now that we have this, let's go back to Power Apps, and I'll actually do it fresh because I had some issues where let's actually add a new screen. Let's do it from scratch. I'll add a button, and let's say get column names. And what I need to do is I need to select the action, flows, and if I'm not wrong, this is that flow. Get column names from data source. Let me see if there are two. I don't know how that happened, but hopefully both of them are the same. Let's see. Okay, so I'll use this, get column names. Let it add over here, run. And because I'm getting something back from the flow, I need to save it either in a, uh, if it's a table that I'm getting back, I'll save it in a collection, but this is just a text value. So I'll save it column name, column names from this. I guess I was using it somewhere else. Column names test. Okay. And this way I can say what I get from that flow into this variable over here. So let's run this. And while it does that, I'll add a label and to show column names test. Oh yeah, so dot column name. So because in the flow, you can actually add multiple outputs when you are responding back to PowerApps. In my case, this output was column names, and that's why I need to refer to that one. And that's why column names test dot column names. So you see over here, it kind of gives you this data. Now, there are some steps involved in kind of filtering out some of the things over here and finally getting the column names. I'll try to go step by step on that. So just be with me, and if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. So what I've done is, let's do this. So first of all, let me change over here. So column names test. Okay, what we'll do is we'll use this split and column names test dot column names. So first of all, what I'm doing is I'm splitting this text by using comma as a separator. And what split does is it gets it into a table. Okay, so and once I have this into my I'm collecting it into a. I know I'm gonna repeat the column names. Let me do one thing. Let me say it as. Actually, yeah, let's just keep it because I might lose the chain of thought over here. It's a bit tricky, but it's basically getting rid of all the quotation marks and everything, and basically getting all the column names, which you can then use. So once I do that, I've got the column names into this collection, and let me show that so that it makes sense. So we'll insert a gallery over here. This will be my column. Okay. So you see over here, this is basically all the column names that it has the column names plus some additional IDs that you need to get rid of. So how do you do that? Now, once I've got the collection, I'm using a clear collect column names final. What I'm doing in there is for all the records in this column names over here, I am getting rid of the quotation, the double quotes, and replacing it with just blank. So char 34 is the I would say the ASCII, if I'm not wrong, and referencing it is the ASCII for double quotes. And let's actually like split over here. So what I need to get rid of is I need to get rid of the double quotes. And also I need to get rid of anything after this colon over here because that's a record value. So what I've done is left is I'm confusing myself here, but just hold on with me. What I did is I first found the place of this colon, and the basically you can use the function find to find the character position of a particular character, and that's what I've done. I found the place, the character position of colon, and then I've got rid of anything after colon, including the colon itself, and also I got rid of the double quotes. So what this column names finally gives me is, and let's change it over here, is, okay, there was one more step involved to get rid of the first two and the last row, but column names finally gets rid of all the extra things that I don't need. And then the third thing that I did was I got rid of the records, the O tag and the internal ID. To do that, what I would do is I'll use the remove column names final. So remove is for removing records from a data source, and I'm getting rid of the first two columns. That's first and column names, and then again I need to get rid of the last record. So I'm remove column names final last of column names. So this way you get only the columns, the actual column names, and the other extra fields that you don't want, you can get rid of that. Now it might be different for a SQL data source or for a Google Drive data source. You'll have to look into it. So this formula might change based on your data source, but you get the idea. It's just getting rid of anything around it and just getting the final column names. And what I did is I put that as a drop down over here. My drop down value is column names final, and it has all my columns over here. So the final step is I'll use my data source. And let's see, column A. It should have the data. I have to remove and add it because I changed the environments which I was working on, and that's why the issue. So let me pull that quickly here. The show columns test and show. Okay. All right. Yep. So now we have, this is my column A. Let me actually get rid of the image. So it just need the title, subtitle, body. Okay. So this is my column A, this is my column B, and this is my column C. So I'll go to the formula for this gallery. Let's say sort by columns. This is my data source. And then, so now it gives me the options over here, but I want the user to be able to select it dynamically. So I'll say drop down on dot selected dot value, and I need to define the order as well. And that's another thing which you could add as a drop down, but for actually, let's do that over here. I'll add another control drop down. This would be ascending, ascending. Oops. So that's my the other drop down, and going back to this drop down at selected value slash ascending. Sorry, drop down. Bear with me, guys. Selected value. All right, and it should. So okay. So let's go into the play mode. So my column A is 1, 2, 3, 4. This my column B is column B and column C are are alphabetical, and I I don't think it's so right now column A is being sorted on a text basis. I didn't choose the column as number, and that's why it's showing 1, 100, 120, and then 2, 3. But if I go descending, it will start from 8, 67. So this is not sort order by number, but if you change if your column type or data type is number, it will do it accordingly. But yeah, let's go to column B. That is this one. It starts from Z, T, J, G, and accordingly if I change it. So I know this seems a bit of a long kind of process just to get 3 column names. I could have just defined it the same way as ascending, descending over here. But you probably have a data source with, I don't know, 15 columns, and maybe you add some columns to it later on in the future. Uh, so this is a kind of more robust way of doing it, I would say, to get the column names dynamically from flow, returning it back here, and then playing around with this, um, playing around with the drop down and just making it easy for the user to select the column and sort the data based on that. So that's all from this demo. I hope both the demos were interesting and was something that would make any of your tasks easier. I know this one would definitely make it a bit easier for a lot of your use cases. Um, and if you have any feedback or any comments, or if you would like me to cover something in the next episode, just let me know in the comments section in the video. We'll be live every Wednesday, so the next one will be next Wednesday, and we'll have Anton Robbins. If you don't know him, he's a huge community member. The power in both PowerApps and Flow, he leads uh, the DC user group as well. Uh, it would be great to have. I mean, it would be really fun to have him in the next episode. So watch out for that, and keep power upping and keep flowing. Thank you guys for joining. Have a good evening. Have a good day wherever you are in based on your time zone. Thank you.